What's up, everybody? In the last video, we made kind of this Cubert style game where we can throw a bouncy ball and it changes the color of our tiles. In this video, what I want to do is improve some of our interactions with the ball to make it a little bit less annoying. My wife was playing it and she didn't like that she had to lean down and grab the ball off the ground. Plus, like, if you have height calibration issues, it could actually be impossible to pick the ball up the way it works right now. So we're going to improve the bounce physics. We're going to add some scripting to make it easier to just grab the ball without actually leaning down for it. And we're going to also add some glow and lighting to make our scene a little bit prettier. The first thing that I want to address is the lighting. If we fix the lighting a little bit, it's going to make our game visually pop a lot better. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll click on World Environment here in my scene tree. And then in the inspector, I'll go over here and I'll open up the environment. What you want to look for is ambient light. So we'll open up ambient light. And our source right now is set to the background. So kind of whatever is back here in the sky is going to be what our ambient lighting looks like. So what we want is just no ambient lighting because we're in the middle of this enclosed space. So I'll set it to disabled. And it's going to look worse before it looks better. But let's just test it out. So back in the simulator, I'm going to throw the ball. And I can't even tell when the colors change because there's no light. Okay, so now that we have the room nice and dark, we need to make these cubes light up when they're hit. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our floor scene, and we're going to go into the script here. So I've added this typecast as a standard material 3D. So this just gives me the hints for the standard material 3D properties. It's pretty useful if you already know what type of variable this is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set the emissive properties to true and false, and we're also going to add a light node. So first, let's change the emission here. So I'll say unique material dot emission enabled equals true. And if it's not on, we'll just set it to false. And again, if you don't have these scripts, we wrote them in the previous video, so you can just go and grab them from the comments and copy paste them. So I got my emission set up in the script. The next thing I'm going to want to do is, by default, yours is going to be black. So if you're emitting black, essentially you're not emitting any light. So what you need to do is you need to figure out, okay, what color do I want my cube to glow? For me, you know, it doesn't have to be super bright. I'm just going to do like this kind of restrained, like a pink, I guess. And we're going to see how that works just on its own. Okay, oh, forgot to turn it off. So all you have to do is just toggle it off and it'll remember what you've set up for your emission. So, okay, it's off. And I'm just going to throw the ball down. Okay, so I'm going to add my light. So I'm just going to right click on my floor node with my floor kind of prefab scene open. Right click, add child node, and I'll go Omni Light 3D. So let's type in Omni Light 3D. It'll pop right up. We'll click that. So now if we look, it's kind of hard to see on its own, but if we save it and we go over here, you see everything's kind of glowing. So I think this is a little bit too intense, especially since we already have emission set up. So let's go ahead and we'll just turn the range down to a 1. And the attenuation, probably, I'll do like a 1.2. And for the light color, I'm going to make it kind of the same emissive color that my cubes glow, but I'm going to add a little bit more of a red tinge. I'm colorblind anyways, it doesn't matter. So we also want to toggle this only when the cube is on. So what I'll do is by default, I'll make it invisible and I can just drag it right into my script and say dot visible. And this trick works for like most of the stuff that you can do in here. Some things you gotta like disable it completely, but most of the time just turning the visibility off works well enough. So there we go, the light is either on or it's off, and we start with it off. So let's test that and see how that looks. All right. Not too bad, not too bad. It does cast a faint light on my hand, but it's not too intense. So now it's time to kind of customize the way the ball moves a little bit better for what we're doing with it. So to do that, we're going to need to use this ball, and you know, XR Tools already gave us a pickable object that's on a rigid body, right? So we can click on this script, and this is from the XR Tools plugin. Now, I don't ever recommend that you modify any of the scripts you get from a Godot add-on. Instead, what you should do is extend this class. And what that does is it essentially creates a copy of everything in here in your own blank script, and then you're free to add your own functions. You're free to override some of these functions. So, for instance, you can override the process function. So that's what we're going to do. And it's going to make it a lot easier to kind of just take what already works from this and bolt on the behavior that we want. To do this, what we're going to do is we are going to go into our file system. We're going to create a new script, and I'm going to name it bouncing ball. So then I'll double click bouncing ball. We'll open it up in the script editor, and I'm just going to close the other ones for now. And maybe I'll just open up the floor script, or not the floor script, the ball script, and that is pickable.gd. So now I've got the class that we're extending so I can look at it, and I've also got the bouncing ball pulled up. So right now it extends node. What we want it to extend is, of course, XR Tools pickable. So I'll just copy this and paste it in here. And now I can attach this bouncing ball script to my ball, and it should work exactly the same way. So we should see all the same things in the inspector. And we'll just go ahead and give it a quick test run. So we can see with just that one line, our ball already behaves exactly like the original XR Tools pickable. And now we can start to add our own custom behavior to it. So what we've got right now is essentially this. We've got this bouncing ball class that just inherits an XR Tools pickable. So now, there's a couple of functions that I'm going to need to look at in XR Tools pickable, which is let go and physics process. So these are a couple of functions that what I'm going to do is I need some custom behavior that's going to run in these functions instead of what runs in the XR Tools pickable class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to override these two functions by defining my own version of these functions inside of the bouncing ball class. And I'm also going to add a variable called velocity to keep track of where I want my ball to be going. All right, so we're back in our script, and we need to actually implement what we've designed in our little slideshow. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable to hold velocity, and velocity is always going to be a vector3, and we can initialize it to vector3.0. And I'll just give it a hard type, just because if it's not a vector3, nothing else is going to work. So there we go. Now let's override our first function. So we're going to do let go, and we need to take in the same arguments. So I'll take in by p linear velocity and p angular velocity, and that can be found right here. So inside of our XR Tools pickable, you'll see let go, and you get all these arguments, and so that's how you know what to pass in when you're overriding a function. So by p linear velocity, p angular velocity, spelled the exact same way. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call super, which is going to call the exact function that's defined in XR tools pickable. So what I'm doing when I say super is, I like what you're doing, I want you to keep doing it, and I want you to do whatever behavior I define below super. So we'll just pass these same arguments in, and then this is where we're going to define our own behavior that we want. So freeze is just something in XR tools pickable that stops the ball from moving normally according to like the standard rigid body code. So we're going to say freeze equals true because we don't want it to move normally, and we're going to set the velocity to this linear velocity that the physics engine passes. So now we're going to know kind of what linear velocity the player is throwing with. And let's just keep track of angular velocity because it might be fun to do something with the spin. Well, we'll do angular velocity. And we'll also keep that as a vector 3, I believe. Just make sure. Yep. And let's see, what doesn't it like? Ah. Well, we'll just call ours ang velocity. And so we'll grab the angular velocity as well. Alright, so there's our let go function. And next up, we're going to override the physics process function to actually define the motion of the ball. And the first thing we're going to do is, if we've picked it up, we're just going to skip out. We're just going to leave it up to the hand to move the ball around. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say var motion equals velocity times delta. So basically just how fast you're moving times how much time has passed since the last frame. And then we also need to actually let the physics engine move it. And in doing so, we're going to check for any collisions with other objects that were also either moving around or static. So we're going to say var collision equals move and collide, and we're going to pass in the motion. And then, if there is a collision, we are going to set a new velocity based on the bounce surface, essentially. All right, so there it is. Let's go ahead and test this, make sure everything works according to plan. So if everything works exactly, we should see it work roughly the same way, but with no gravity. Perfect. So now it's flying all around the room and there's no gravity at all. I think that's a little bit more fun for like a Qbert style game where you don't really need the gravity as much. You just kind of want it to fly around almost Brick Breaker style. I love it. So now, before we get too fancy with the motion of the ball, you know, we already wrote the script, we already gave it some basic motion, so we know we can play with it as much as we want. I think the first thing we should address is, once I throw this ball, there's no getting it back. So let's go ahead and write another simple script to retrieve the ball for us. Okay, so before we actually get started implementing this, I just want to talk about what we want. So each hand is going to own an item, which in this case is the ball. And then if the player tries to grab and doesn't actually grab anything, it's going to spawn whatever item we drop in this slot. And of course, only one copy of the item should exist at once. We're not going to have the player spawning an arbitrarily large number of objects, especially in VR. It's going to crash the game. Alright, so for this script, I'm just going to leave it in the comments. It's a little bit more involved than I want to get into for a beginner tutorial. So what you're going to do is you're just going to create a script, name it boundpickable.gd, just like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to your hand that you want your ball to spawn into, so I'll probably do both. And I'll right click, add a child node. I'll make it a node 3D. And I'm going to name it bound item. And what I'm going to do is I'll just drag my script onto it like so. And the script looked like this, just in case you need to know. So you have a few fields you got to fill out when you drop this in. So you got bound pickable, pickup function, and then grip threshold and pickup action should be fine. So for pickup function, you're just going to grab this function pickup and just drag it in. And for bound pickable, you're going to take your ball, you can drag it in here. I've already saved it, so I just saved mine as ball. And so what you'll do is you'll just grab this ball, drag it over here, and now it's all set up for the right hand only. So what I'll need to do is I can just copy this. So I'll Control D, and I'll drag it up into my left hand. Once it's in my left hand, I can rename it back to bound item, and I'll need to reset the function pickup, and the bound pickable is actually fine. So I'll just change that. So now we should be good on our left and right hands. So first we should test if I can grab the ball without spawning a new one. Okay, looks like that worked okay. So now I should be able to spawn one into my right hand. Okay. And then I should also be able to spawn a unique one in my left hand, and we should have 3 total bouncing around. Okay, I can see 3. Now I should be able to recall them back to my hand. Okay, so I'm holding one and I only see 2 bouncing around. And I'll leave that here, and I'll just recall the other one. Alright, I got hit by one of the stray balls, but that's okay. I've got 2 balls right here. Excellent. So that's it for this video. We cleaned it up quite a bit, and we added some lighting, we added some custom physics for the ball, and we added a recall function. I think that about wraps it up for the intro series. What I'm going to do is list this project on GitHub as kind of a starter project. And then what we're going to do is release a series of shorts covering just little touch-ups to make your VR games a little bit nicer that you should be able to apply to any VR game. So we're going to do a few of those and see how it goes. So hopefully we'll see you around.
Welcome to the Big Dog, once a training vessel for the U.S. Air Force parachute